The first time Alara Hayes saw the man in the tower, she felt his loneliness like a physical blow to her chest. It shouldn't have been possible, not across 50 yards of manicured lawn, not through the crystalline autumn air that separated her from that high, barred window. But there it was, a grief so profound it seemed to pulse in the lengthening shadows of late afternoon, reaching for her with invisible fingers. She'd only been on Silvercrest Pack territory for 3 hours. Miss Hayes? The beta's wife, a petite woman named Rachel with kind eyes and nervous hands, touched her elbow. The Alpha is ready to begin the welcome ceremony. Alara forced her gaze away from the tower, a stone structure that looked medieval and wrong against the modern pack houses surrounding it, and managed a smile. Of course. I'm sorry, I was just admiring the architecture. Rachel's returning smile flickered and died. Her eyes didn't follow Alara's to the tower. In fact, she angled her body deliberately away from it, as if the building itself might bite. Yes, well. Silvercrest has a long history. Rachel's voice had gone carefully neutral, the kind of neutral that screamed danger, changed the subject. Please, everyone's waiting. The welcome ceremony was everything Alara had expected, formal, slightly awkward, and filled with the particular tension that always existed between humans and werewolves who were trying very hard to be progressive. Alpha Darius Silvercrest was a mountain of a man with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes like chips of winter ice. He shook her hand with perfunctory politeness and made a short speech about Silvercrest's commitment to education for all pack members, including those with disabilities. Luna Catherine stood beside him, beautiful and remote as a statue, her smile never reaching her eyes. Their son Marcus, the heir apparent, as Rachel had informed her during the drive from the bus station, was everything an alpha in waiting should be. Tall, confident, with his father's commanding presence softened by his mother's classical features. He welcomed Alara warmly, asked intelligent questions about her experience with deaf education, and said all the right things about inclusion and progress. But Alara kept looking at the tower. She couldn't help it. During the alpha's speech, she'd glanced up and seen him again, the pale figure behind the bars. He wasn't watching the ceremony. He was watching her. Even from this distance, she could feel the intensity of that gaze, desperate and hungry and achingly human. When she looked around, no one else seemed to notice him. Or they were very, very good at pretending not to. The school is just through here, Rachel said after the ceremony concluded, guiding Alara down a stone path. We have 12 students currently, ages 6 through 15. All deaf or hard of hearing. Some are pack members' children, others are from allied packs who've sent them here for specialized education. Alara made appropriate sounds of interest, asking questions about curriculum and resources, but her mind was still on that window. On those hollow, haunted eyes. Rachel, she said finally, as they reached the door of a cheerful yellow building that looked nothing like the Gothic tower. Who's in that tower? The stone one near the main house? Rachel's hand froze on the door handle. For 3 long seconds, she didn't move. When she finally turned, her expression was carefully blank. I'm not sure what you mean. The tower. I saw someone in the window during the ceremony. A man, I think. Young. You must have seen a shadow. Rachel pushed open the door with too much force. The tower is old storage. No one's been in there for years. Now, let me show you the classrooms. But Alara had grown up with a deaf brother. She'd spent her whole life learning to read what people didn't say, to catch the truth in averted eyes and fidgeting hands. Rachel was lying. Badly. The question was, why? That night, Alara couldn't sleep. They'd given her a cottage on the edge of pack territory, small but comfortable, with a view of the forest and, unfortunately, a direct sight line to the tower. Moonlight painted it silver, made it look even more like something from a Gothic novel. The madwoman in the attic, she thought, except the figure she'd seen had definitely been male. At 11:30, she gave up on sleep, pulled on jeans and a sweater, and slipped outside. The pack lands were quiet. Wolves were nocturnal by nature, but most of the families here kept human hours for the sake of the children. Security was light, or perhaps just subtle. Elara had the distinct feeling she was being watched as she crossed the lawn, but no one stopped her. The tower door was locked, but not well. The bolt was old, rusted, and gave way after she'd worried at it for less than a minute with a hairpin. The ease of it made her stomach turn. Either no one cared enough to maintain the lock, or they assumed no one would be foolish enough to try. Inside, the air smelled of stone and neglect. A narrow spiral staircase wound upward into darkness. Elara pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and began to climb. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. She was trespassing in an Alpha's territory, breaking into a building she'd been tacitly warned away from. If there really was someone up here, someone the pack was hiding, they probably had good reason. But she kept seeing those eyes. That desperate, aching loneliness. The stairs seemed to go on forever. Finally, she reached a landing and a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bars. No lock on this one, just a bolt on the outside that slid free with a metallic shriek that made her wince. The door swung inward. The room beyond was barely furnished, a narrow bed with gray sheets, a single wooden chair, a small table. No decorations. No personal items. The walls were covered in scratches, thousands of them, layers upon layers, as if someone had been keeping tallies or writing messages in a language of desperation. And in the center of it all, backlit by moonlight from the barred window, stood a man. He was thin, too thin, as if he hadn't been eating properly for months or years. His dark hair hung past his shoulders, unkempt. He wore simple clothes, gray as the sheets, that hung loose on his frame. But his eyes, God, his eyes were the most arresting shade of amber gold, and they were fixed on her with an expression of such shock and hope that it stole her breath. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Just stared at her as if she were an apparition that might disappear if he blinked. Elara's hands moved before her conscious mind caught up, signing the simple greeting she'd taught 1,000 times, hello. The effect was instantaneous. The man's eyes went wide, luminous. His hands flew up in response, movements sharp with disuse but unmistakably ASL, you know sign language? Yes, Elara signed back, stepping further into the room. Her throat felt tight. What's your name? He hesitated, and she saw something complicated flicker across his face, shame, maybe, or fear. Then his hands moved, Kai. I'm Elara. She moved closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Why are you here? Why are you locked up? Kai's jaw tightened. His hands moved in short, bitter gestures, because I'm broken. Because I'm a disappointment. Because I have no wolf. Elara's heart cracked. She understood pack hierarchy, understood how much a werewolf's identity was tied to their wolf. But to lock someone away, to treat them like a shameful secret. That's not right, she signed fiercely. You're not broken. Something in Kai's expression shifted. He took a step toward her, then another, until only the width of the barred window separated them. Up close, she could see the fine bones of his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly as he signed. Who are you? Why did you come here? I don't know, she signed honestly. I saw you. I couldn't stop thinking about you. Kai's eyes searched hers, and Elara felt something electric pass between them. Without thinking, she reached through the bars, offering her hand. He stared at it for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. The moment their skin touched, Elara's world exploded. A howl tore through her mind, not with her ears, but inside her skull, primal and agonized and so loud she thought her head might split open. She gasped, tried to pull back, but Kai's hand tightened on hers. His eyes had gone pure gold, glowing in the darkness, and his mouth was open in a silent scream. A wolf's howl. A wolf's scream. But Kai's lips weren't moving. Elara stumbled backward, her hands slipping from his, her back hitting the doorframe. The howl faded but didn't disappear, it echoed in her mind like a trapped thing, furious and desperate and there. Kai's hands moved frantically, urgently, "You can hear him?" Elara couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. She just nodded. The hope that blazed across Kai's face was almost painful to witness. He pressed against the bars, signing so fast his hands blurred. "You can hear him? My wolf? Fenrir? You can hear him screaming?" Another nod. Elara's voice came out as a whisper. "How is that possible?" Kai's hands stilled. Then, slowly, carefully, he signed, "Please. Please help us. They say I have no wolf, but he's there. He's trapped. He's dying. And no one believes me. No one can hear him." His eyes, those impossibly gold eyes, locked on hers. "Except you." Chapter 2. Elara didn't sleep that night. How could she, when a wolf's anguished howl still echoed in the chambers of her mind? She sat at her cottage window until dawn painted the sky pink and gold, watching the tower, replaying those final moments. The desperate hope in Kai's eyes. The way his hands had trembled as he signed, "Please help us." The impossible, undeniable truth that she had heard something no one else could, a wolf that supposedly didn't exist. By the time the sun crested the tree line, she'd made her decision. Whatever was happening to Kai, whatever had been done to him, it was wrong. And if she was the only one who could hear his wolf screams, then she had a responsibility to help. Even if it meant going against an alpha's wishes. The school day passed in a blur. Elara taught her lessons on autopilot, her mind circling endlessly around the mystery in the tower. The children were wonderful, bright, eager, full of life, but she kept catching herself staring out the window toward that stone prison. At lunch, she found herself in the staff room with two Omega wolves who worked as teaching assistants. Maya and Sophie were younger than Elara, probably in their early 20s, with the kind of easy friendship that came from growing up together. They'd been kind to her since she arrived, patient with her questions about pack dynamics. Now seemed as good a time as any to ask the questions that really mattered. "I saw someone yesterday," Elara said casually, pouring herself coffee from the communal pot. "In the old tower near the Alpha's house. A young man." The effect was immediate. Maya's sandwich froze halfway to her mouth. Sophie's eyes went wide, then darted toward the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. "You shouldn't," Sophie started, then stopped herself. "Miss Hayes, it's better not to ask about that." "Why not?" Elara kept her voice gentle, non-threatening. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm just curious." Maya and Sophie exchanged a loaded glance. Some silent communication passed between them, the kind only old friends could manage. Finally, Maya set down her sandwich and sighed. "It's Kai," she said quietly. "The Alpha's firstborn son." Elara's heart kicked. She forced herself to remain calm, curious but not overly invested. "I didn't know the Alpha had another son besides Marcus." "Most people don't." Sophie's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's been locked up there for almost 10 years. Since he was 16. 10 years. Elara's stomach turned. "Why?" Another glance between the two Omegas. Then Maya leaned forward, her voice dropping even lower. "Because he's wolfless. And mute. He never shifted at his coming-of-age ceremony, never showed any sign of having a wolf at all. In a pack like Silvercrest, old, traditional, powerful, that's..." She trailed off, shaking her head. "That's a disgrace," Sophie finished. "Especially for an Alpha's heir." Alpha Darius couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that his firstborn, the son who was supposed to inherit everything, was broken. The word landed like a slap. Broken. The same word Kai had used to describe himself. "So he locked him away," Elara said flatly. "His own son." "To protect the family's reputation," Maya said quickly, as if that made it better. "And to protect Kai too, in a way. You have to understand, some pack members wanted him exiled. Sent away to live as a rogue. Alpha Darius refused. He said Kai was still his blood, even if he was defective. Ilara's hands clenched around her coffee mug. That's monstrous. It's pack law, Sophie said, but she didn't sound convinced. The strong protect the weak, but only if the weak don't threaten the pack standing. A wolfless heir would make Silvercrest look vulnerable to rival packs. It could have started wars. So Marcus became the heir instead, Ilara said. Both Omegas nodded. Marcus is everything an alpha should be, Maya said. Strong, confident, a natural leader. He shifted at 15, a year early. His wolf is powerful, dominant. Everyone loves him. There was something in the way she said it, though. Something that didn't quite ring true. Do you love him? Ilara asked. Maya's smile was sad. Marcus is a good man. He'll make a fine alpha. But... She hesitated. Kai was always the kinder one. Before his ceremony, before everything went wrong, he was gentle. Patient. He used to help in the kitchens, played with the Omega children, never pulled rank even though he was the alpha's son. People loved him. And then he couldn't shift, couldn't speak, and suddenly all that kindness didn't matter anymore, Ilara said bitterly. That's how pack hierarchy works, Sophie said softly. Without a wolf, you're not really one of us. You're just human. The word hung in the air between them. Just human. As if being human were a curse, a failing, something to be ashamed of. Ilara thought of her brother Jamie, deaf since birth, brilliant and funny and brave. She thought of every student she'd ever taught, every person who'd been told they were less than because they didn't fit someone else's definition of normal. And she thought of Kai, locked in that tower for a decade, treated like a shameful secret because he was different. He's still there, Maya said quietly. In the tower. The alpha sends food up twice a day. Sophie and I used to take it to him, before. She trailed off. Before what? Maya's eyes were haunted. Before we realized how much it hurt him. Having people come and go, seeing the pity in our eyes. After a while, the alpha started sending warriors instead. Men who didn't know Kai before, who just saw their duty. Does anyone visit him? Ilara asked. His mother? His brother? Both Omegas shook their heads. Luna Catherine hasn't been to the tower in years, Sophie said. I don't think she can bear it. And Marcus? She hesitated. Marcus says it's too painful. That seeing Kai like that reminds him of what he lost, his brother, his friend. Or what he gained, Ilara thought darkly. An inheritance. A future. Everything that should have been Kai's. Thank you for telling me, Ilara said finally. I know it wasn't easy. Maya touched her hand briefly. Just, be careful, Miss Hayes. The alpha doesn't like people asking questions about Kai. And some secrets are kept for good reasons. But as Ilara returned to her classroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that this particular secret was kept for all the wrong ones. That night, she returned to the tower. And the night after that. And the night after that. It became a ritual, a dangerous routine. After the pack settled into sleep, Ilara would slip across the darkened lawn, pick the rusted lock, and climb those spiral stairs to Kai's prison. Each time, he was waiting for her. Not by the door, he seemed afraid of seeming too eager, too desperate, but by the window, backlit by moonlight, his amber eyes finding hers the moment she entered. They talked in sign language. Or rather, Ilara talked and Kai responded, his hands moving with increasing fluency as she taught him more advanced signs, more nuanced ways to express the thoughts that had been trapped inside him for so long. She learned that he could hear perfectly. That his muteness wasn't cognitive or neurological, he simply couldn't make his vocal cords produce sound. No one knew why. It had been that way since birth. My parents took me to specialists, he signed during their third visit. Healers, doctors, even a witch once. No one could fix it. My father eventually decided I was being punished by the moon goddess for some sin in a past life. That's ridiculous, Alara signed sharply. Kai's smile was bitter. Is it? I couldn't speak. Then I couldn't shift. Maybe the goddess really does hate me. The goddess doesn't hate you. Your father failed you. Kai's hands stilled. His eyes searched hers, and she saw such naked longing there it made her chest ache. Not desire, at least, not only desire, but something deeper. The desperate need to be seen, to be understood, to be treated as if he still mattered. Why do you keep coming here? He signed finally. You barely know me. I'm nothing. No one. You're not nothing, Alara signed fiercely. She moved closer to the bars, close enough to see the flecks of green in his golden eyes. You're Kai. You're intelligent and kind, and you've survived something that would have broken most people. That makes you extraordinary. Color rose in Kai's pale cheeks. His hands trembled slightly as he signed. No one has said anything like that to me in 10 years. Then everyone else is a fool. This time, Kai's smile was real. Small, hesitant, but genuine. It transformed his face, made him look younger, less haunted. Alara's heart did something complicated in her chest. Dangerous, she thought. This was getting dangerous. But she kept coming back. By the end of the first week, Alara could hear Fenrir almost constantly. It started as a low growl at the back of her mind whenever she thought about Kai. Then it grew stronger, clearer, until she could distinguish emotions in the sound: rage, grief, desperation. The wolf was there, trapped somewhere inside Kai, screaming to be released. Tell me about him, she signed during their 7th visit. Your wolf. Fenrir. Kai's expression turned inward, distant. I've felt him since I was 13, he signed slowly. Most wolves don't manifest until 15 or 16, but Fenrir was there early. Strong. He was supposed to be powerful, I could feel it. My father was so proud. What happened? The night of my ceremony, I felt Fenrir surging up inside me. The shift was starting, I could feel my bones beginning to change. But then, his hands faltered. It was like hitting a wall. The shift stopped. The pain was excruciating. I collapsed. When I woke up, everyone said my wolf had never come. That I was defective. But you still feel him. Every day. Every hour. Kai's hands moved with barely controlled fury. He's there, Alara. He's trapped. It's like he's in a cage inside me, throwing himself against the bars, and I can't let him out. The pack thinks I'm wolfless, but the truth is so much worse. I have a wolf. I can feel him dying by inches, and there's nothing I can do. Alara's throat tightened. She understood now why Kai's eyes sometimes flashed gold, why she could hear Fenrir's howls. The wolf was there, fighting, refusing to fade quietly into nothing. When I touch you, she signed carefully, I can hear him. Has anyone else ever been able to do that? Kai shook his head. You're the first. I don't understand how or why. Neither did Alara. But she was starting to suspect it meant something. Something important. Their fingers touched through the bars more often now. Small contacts that felt monumental, a brush of knuckles, palms pressed together, fingers intertwining. Each time, Fenrir's presence grew stronger in Alara's mind. The wolf recognized her, she realized. Knew her. Trusted her in a way he didn't trust anyone else. And Kai watched her with an intensity that made her skin warm and her pulse quicken. There was hunger in those golden eyes now, but also tenderness. Gratitude. Something that might have been the beginning of love. It terrified her. She was human. He was werewolf royalty, however fallen. This couldn't go anywhere. Shouldn't go anywhere. But her heart didn't seem to care about logic. On the 10th night, everything changed. They were sitting close to the barred window, as close as they could get with iron between them. Kai had been telling her about his childhood, stories of running through the forest with Marcus, of learning to hunt, of the time he'd tried to bake his mother a birthday cake and nearly burned down the kitchens. He'd smiled more tonight than in all their previous visits combined. Elara found herself transfixed by the way it softened his features, made him look less like a tragic prisoner and more like the young man he should have been. "I wish I could see you smile in person," she signed impulsively. "Not through bars." Kai's expression turned wistful. "I wish for a lot of impossible things." "Like what?" His hands hesitated, then moved, "Like being free. Like having my wolf back. Like being someone you could." He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind." "Someone I could what?" Kai looked away, but not before she saw the longing in his eyes. The answer he wouldn't let himself sign. "Someone you could love." Elara's heart hammered. She made a decision that was probably stupid, definitely reckless. She reached through the bars and touched his chest, right over his heart. "Kai," she whispered aloud. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. Her vision went white, then dark, then she was somewhere else. A vast darkness stretched in all directions, empty and cold. In the center of that darkness crouched a massive black wolf, easily twice the size of any wolf she'd ever seen. His fur was midnight dark, his eyes burning gold. And wrapped around him, binding him in place, were chains, thick, glowing chains of silver light that burned where they touched his fur. The wolf's head snapped toward her. Recognition blazed in those golden eyes. "Help us," a voice roared in her mind, not words, but pure emotion, raw and desperate. "Help us, please." The wolf lunged toward her, but the chains yanked him back. He howled, that same agonized sound she'd been hearing all along, and threw himself against the bindings. They held. They always held. Elara gasped and found herself back in the tower, her hands still pressed to Kai's chest. His eyes had gone completely gold, his breathing ragged. "That's Fenrir," he signed frantically. "You saw him. You saw what's happening to us." Elara's hand trembled against his chest. "Those chains," she whispered. "Kai, those weren't natural. Someone did this to you." His hands stilled. His eyes widened. "What?" "Someone bound your wolf." The certainty settled over her like ice water. This wasn't a failed shift or a curse from the moon goddess. Someone deliberately chained Fenrir. Trapped him. "This was done to you, Kai." For a long moment, Kai just stared at her. Then his legs seemed to give out. He sank to his knees, his hands shaking as they formed words. "Who? Why? Who would do this to me?" Elara knelt too, pressing closer to the bars. "I don't know. But we're going to find out." Kai's eyes met hers, and she saw hope and terror warring in their depths. "And if we do? Can you break the chains?" "I don't know," Elara admitted. "But I'm going to try." She reached through the bars and took his hand. This time, Fenrir's howl in her mind wasn't just anguish. It was hope. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Elara became a woman possessed. During the day, she taught her students with mechanical efficiency, her body going through the motions while her mind churned elsewhere. At lunch, she made excuses to skip the staff room, instead spending her breaks in the PAX library, a musty building near the edge of territory that smelled of old paper and older secrets. Wolf suppression magic. Binding spells. Curse work that could cage a wolf inside its human host. The research was difficult. Most books on dark magic had been removed from public PAC libraries decades ago, deemed too dangerous for general access. But Elara was nothing if not resourceful. She sweet-talked the elderly librarian, a half-blind Omega named George who remembered when the library had housed a full occult section. He pointed her toward the restricted archives in the basement, then conveniently forgot to ask why she needed access. What she found made her blood run cold. Wolf binding was ancient magic, the kind that required blood, intent, and intimate knowledge of the victim. It wasn't something that could be done accidentally or from a distance. Whoever had bound Fenrir had been close to Kai, close enough to touch him, to take his blood, to weave the spell while he was vulnerable. The night of his shifting ceremony. Ilara's hands shook as she read the spidery text in a book so old its pages crumbled at the edges. The binding must occur during the wolf's first emergence, when the barrier between human and beast is thinnest. The caster requires the subject's blood, a silver anchor, and words of power spoken at the moment of transformation. Once bound, the wolf will be trapped in eternal stasis, alive but imprisoned, conscious but powerless. Each attempt to shift will tighten the chains, causing escalating agony until the subject ceases trying altogether. Someone had done this to Kai deliberately. Methodically. And they'd done it when he was 16 years old, in front of his entire pack, ensuring everyone would witness his failure and declare him wolfless. It was elegant, in a horrifying way. The perfect crime. But who? And why? Ilara copied the relevant passages by hand, not trusting the ancient books to leave the library. She sketched the diagrams showing how binding spells worked, how they anchored to the victim's life force. And she noted, with growing dread, that breaking such a spell required one of three things: the death of the caster, a counter-curse of equal power, or the willing sacrifice of someone the victim loved. None of those options were acceptable. She was so absorbed in her research that she didn't notice the man watching her from between the stacks until he spoke. Heavy reading for a schoolteacher. Ilara's head snapped up. Marcus Silvercrest stood 3 feet away, leaning against a bookshelf with casual grace. He wore running clothes, fitted athletic where that showcased his powerful build, and his dark hair was damp with sweat, as if he'd just finished a workout. But his eyes were sharp. Calculating. Fixed on the book in front of her with uncomfortable intensity. Just curious about pack history, Ilara said lightly, closing the book and sliding it back onto the shelf. The students ask questions sometimes. I like to be prepared. Do they ask about curse work often? Marcus moved closer, and Ilara had to fight the urge to step back. There was something predatory in the way he moved, something that made her hindbrain scream danger. That's Mordrin's compendium of dark arts. Pretty advanced stuff for show and tell. Ilara forced a smile. I'm a thorough teacher. Marcus's gaze swept over her, assessing. You've been spending a lot of time in the library lately. And taking long walks at night. The warriors have noticed. Her heart kicked. I like the quiet. I'm not used to living in pack territory. Sometimes I need space to decompress. Of course. His smile was charming, warm, nothing like the coldness in his eyes. I just want to make sure you're settling in well. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask. We want you to feel welcome here. It was a warning dressed up as hospitality. We're watching you. Thank you, Ilara said, gathering her notes with hands that wanted to tremble. I appreciate that. Now if you'll excuse me, I have lesson plans to prepare. She walked past him, feeling his gaze on her back like a physical touch. It wasn't until she was outside, gulping down fresh air, that she allowed herself to shake. Marcus knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to be suspicious. She'd have to be more careful. But that night, caution warred with desperation and lost. We need to try something, Ilara told Kai, her hands moving urgently in the moonlight streaming through his window. I've been researching the binding spell. I think if we can trigger a partial shift, just enough to test the chains without fully transforming, we might learn something useful about how they work. Kai's expression was skeptical. I've tried shifting 1,000 times. It never works. It only hurts. I know. But you've always tried alone, haven't you? With no one to anchor you, no one to help pull Fenrir forward. Ilara pressed her palm against the bars between them. Let me help. Let me be there with you. It's too dangerous. If someone catches us, then we'll deal with it. Kai, we can't break the chains if we don't understand them first. And I can't understand them from books alone. I need to feel what's happening when you try to shift. Kai stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, his hands moved. You'd risk that for me? I'd risk more than that. Something flickered in his eyes, hope, fear, and that dangerous warmth that had been growing between them for days. Finally, he nodded. Okay. But not here. If I scream, if something goes wrong, the whole pack will hear. We need privacy. The forest? There's a clearing half a mile north of here. I used to go there before. He stopped, looked away. Before. I know the way. Ilara's pulse quickened. Can you leave? The tower? For the first time since she'd met him, Kai smiled with something like mischief. He reached down and lifted a loose stone from the floor, revealing a narrow gap beneath. The foundation is old. Crumbling. I could dig my way out if I wanted to. Then why haven't you? His smile faded. Where would I go? I'm wolfless, remember? Rogues would kill me. Other packs would reject me. And my father would hunt me down as a disgrace to the family name. This tower is a prison, but at least it's safe. Ilara's heart ached. Come with me tonight. Just for an hour. Let me show you that you're more than what they've said you are. Kai's eyes met hers, and she saw the exact moment he decided to trust her. To hope. 1 hour, he signed. Then I come back before dawn. Getting out of the tower was easier than Ilara expected. Kai moved through the gap in the foundation with practiced ease, emerging into the night air like a ghost. He stood for a moment, breathing deeply, his face tilted toward the stars. I forgot how big the sky is, he signed, and Ilara had to blink back sudden tears. They moved through the forest in silence, Kai navigating by memory despite a decade of imprisonment. He was graceful in a way Ilara hadn't expected, sure-footed and quiet, moving through the underbrush without snapping a single twig. Wolf instincts, she realized. Even bound, Fenrir influenced his human body. The clearing was small, ringed by ancient pines, carpeted with moss that glowed silver in the moonlight. It was beautiful and private and perfect. Okay, Ilara said softly, then signed, tell me what you need. Kai's hands trembled as he responded, I don't know. I've never successfully shifted. I don't know what I'm doing. Then we'll figure it out together. Close your eyes. Focus on Fenrir. Try to feel where he is inside you. Kai obeyed, his breathing slowing as he turned his attention inward. Ilara stepped closer, placing one hand over his heart and the other on the back of his neck. She could feel his pulse hammering beneath her palm. I'm here, she whispered. You're not alone. Now call him. Call Fenrir forward. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Kai's body went rigid. His eyes snapped open, pure gold, no white visible at all. His mouth opened in a silent scream. And his bones began to crack. Ilara heard it, felt it, through their connection. Fenrir surging forward with desperate hope, throwing himself against his prison one more time. For a heartbeat, she thought it might work. Kai's fingers elongated, claws pushing through his nail beds. His spine curved, restructuring itself. Fur rippled beneath his skin. Then the chains activated. In her mind's eye, Ilara saw them, those silver chains wrapping tighter around Fenrir, burning into his flesh, dragging him back into the darkness. The wolf's roar of rage and agony nearly deafened her. Kai collapsed, convulsing in the moss. His body was trying to shift and being punished for it simultaneously. Bones broke and healed and broke again. Muscles tore. His silent screams were somehow worse than if he'd had a voice, his mouth open in wordless agony, his body arching off the ground. Stop. Ilara grabbed him, tried to ground him, to pull him back. Kai, stop. Let him go. Don't fight the chains. But Kai couldn't stop. Or Fenrir couldn't. The wolf was frantic now, maddened by pain and imprisonment, throwing himself against the bindings with suicidal desperation. The chains burned brighter. Tighter. They're designed to punish any attempt at shifting, Alara realized with horror. The more he tries, the worse it gets. It's not just a prison, it's a torture device. She did the only thing she could think of. She pressed her forehead to Kai's and poured every ounce of her will into the mental space where Fenrir raged. Stop, she screamed into the darkness. You're hurting him. You're killing him. Fenrir, please. The wolf's golden eyes found hers. For a moment, she felt his fury, his desperate need for freedom. Then, slowly, agonizingly, he retreated. The convulsions stopped. Kai's body went limp in Alara's arms, his breathing ragged, his skin slick with sweat. When he opened his eyes, they were amber again, human, exhausted, devastated. I'm sorry, he signed weakly. I hoped. Shoo. Alara held him, rocking slightly. It's not your fault. The spell is worse than I thought. It's not just binding Fenrir. It's punishing him. Punishing you both every time you try to shift. Kai's hands moved shakily. Whoever did this wanted to make sure I could never be whole again. They wanted me to suffer every time I tried. Yes. Alara's voice was hard. Which means they're a sadist. And they're close enough to have access to you at your most vulnerable. A branch snapped behind them. Alara's head whipped around. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, backlit by moonlight. Marcus. Well, the heir apparent said, stepping forward with his hands raised in a placating gesture. This is quite the scene. Kai scrambled upright, putting himself between Alara and his brother despite his weakened state. His hands flew. Marcus. Relax, brother. Marcus's voice was gentle, concerned. Nothing like the calculating coldness Alara had seen in the library. I'm not going to report you. Either of you. Alara didn't believe him for a second. How long have you been watching? Long enough. Marcus moved closer, and Alara saw genuine distress on his face as he looked at Kai. Long enough to see what happened when he tried to shift. Gods, Kai. I had no idea it was that bad. Kai's hands moved uncertainly. You're not going to tell father? No. Marcus knelt beside them, his expression pained. Kai, I know you think I abandoned you. That I forgot about you in that tower. But the truth is, I've felt guilty every single day for the last 10 years. You're my brother. My best friend. And I did nothing to help you. Something flickered in Kai's eyes. Hope. Desperate, painful hope. Alara's instinct screamed danger, but she held her tongue. I've known for years that something was wrong, Marcus continued. The way your shift failed wasn't natural. The way father was so quick to lock you away, to declare you cursed. I've suspected for a long time that someone did something to you that night. You never said anything, Alara said flatly. Marcus's gaze shifted to her, and for just a moment, she saw something cold flicker behind the concern. Then it was gone. I was a child. Scared. Grieving. By the time I was old enough to understand, to question, it seemed too late. The damage was done. Do you believe me now? Kai signed, his hands trembling with emotion. Do you believe I have a wolf? Yes. Marcus reached out and gripped Kai's shoulder. I believe you. And I want to help you get him back. Why now? Alara demanded. Why offer to help after a decade of silence? Marcus's jaw tightened. Because I can't live with the guilt anymore. Because I'm going to be alpha soon, and I want to make things right before I take on that responsibility. He looked at Kai. Because you're my brother, and I failed you once. I won't fail you again. Kai's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You mean it? I swear it on my wolf, Marcus said solemnly. Every instinct Alara had told her this was wrong. That Marcus was lying, manipulating, playing some deeper game. But Kai looked at his brother with such raw hope, such desperate need to believe that someone in his family still loved him, that she couldn't bring herself to shatter it. Not yet. If you want to help, she said carefully, we need information. Books on binding curses, counterspells, anything that could break the chains around Fenrir. Marcus nodded. I have access to Father's private library. There are books there that would never be allowed in the public collection, dark grimoires, forbidden texts. I can get you what you need. When? Tomorrow night. Meet me at the library after midnight. He stood, offering Kai a hand up. In the meantime, get back to the tower before dawn. And Kai? He squeezed his brother's hand. I'm going to fix this. I promise. They parted ways at the edge of the forest. Marcus headed toward the main house while Alara helped Kai back to the tower. He was weak from the failed shift, leaning heavily on her, but his hands kept moving. He means it. I know you don't trust him, but I saw it in his eyes. He wants to help. Alara said nothing. She helped Kai through the gap in the foundation, watched him climb back up to his prison, and forced herself to smile as he signed goodnight through the bars. But her stomach churned with unease. The next night, Marcus met her at the library as promised. He carried a leather-bound book so old it looked like it might disintegrate at a touch. This is it, he said, handing it over with reverence. The Codex of Severance. It contains every known method of breaking binding curses. If the answer exists, it's in here. Alara took the book carefully. It was heavy, thrumming with some residual magic that made her fingertips tingle. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Marcus's expression was grave. Breaking a curse like this won't be easy. It might require sacrifice. Blood. Pain. Are you prepared for that? If it helps Kai, yes. Something flickered across Marcus's face, too quick for her to read. You care about him. It wasn't a question. Alara met his gaze steadily. Yes. Be careful, Marcus said softly. Kai's been alone for a long time. He might mistake gratitude for something deeper. I wouldn't want either of you to get hurt. It was a warning. Or a threat. Alara couldn't tell which. She returned to her cottage with the book clutched to her chest, her heart pounding. Finally, they might have answers. She waited until she was inside, curtains drawn, before opening the ancient tome. The pages were filled with cramped handwriting in languages she didn't recognize, diagrams of magical circles and binding runes. She flipped through carefully, searching for anything relevant. A piece of paper fluttered out from between the pages. Alara picked it up. It was modern paper, folded once, with words written in neat, precise handwriting. Stop helping him, or your deaf brother dies. You have 3 days. The world tilted. Her brother. Jamie. Safe in the city, 300 miles away, living his life, completely unaware that his sister had stumbled into something dark and dangerous. Someone knew about him. Someone was threatening him. Alara's hands shook as she stared at the note. The handwriting was familiar, she'd seen it before, somewhere, recently, but she couldn't place it. Her mind was spinning too fast, fear and fury warring inside her chest. 3 days. She looked at the ancient book, then at the note, then toward the window where she could just barely see the top of Kai's tower in the distance. Someone didn't want her helping Kai. Someone was willing to kill an innocent man to stop her. Which meant she was getting close to the truth. And the truth was dangerous enough to murder for. Chapter 4. Alara didn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table, the threatening note spread before her like an accusation, and tried to think past the panic clawing at her throat. Your deaf brother dies. 3 days. Jamie. Sweet, brilliant Jamie with his easy laugh and terrible cooking skills, who taught her more about courage than anyone she'd ever met. Jamie, who had no idea his sister had stumbled into a nightmare. She should walk away. Pack her bags, leave Silvercrest, take Jamie and disappear somewhere far from werewolves and curses and imprisoned wolves screaming in the dark. She should. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kai's face. The hope in his amber eyes when she'd promised to help him. The way his hands had trembled when Marcus offered to be his ally again. The decade of loneliness and suffering etched into every line of his too thin body. If she left now, she'd be abandoning him to that tower. To that slow death of the spirit. To chains that would tighten year after year until Fenrir, and Kai, simply gave up. Damn it, she whispered into the pre-dawn darkness. She couldn't walk away. Which meant she had to figure out who'd written this note and neutralize the threat before 3 days ran out. The handwriting. She'd seen it before, she was certain of it. Elara grabbed her bag and rifled through the papers inside, permission slips from parents, notes from the school administrator, a welcome letter from. Her hands stilled. The welcome letter. The one that had been waiting in her cottage when she arrived. Signed by Luna Catherine herself, welcoming Elara to Silvercrest and expressing the pack's commitment to inclusive education. Elara laid the threat note beside the welcome letter. Her stomach dropped. The handwriting was identical. Same careful loops on the letters, same precise spacing, same slight rightward slant. Luna Catherine had threatened her brother's life. Kai's own mother. Elara spent the day in a fog of shock and calculation. She taught her classes mechanically, smiled at students, and nodded through staff meetings while her mind churned endlessly. Why would Catherine threaten her? The Luna had barely acknowledged Elara's existence beyond that initial welcome letter. She certainly hadn't shown any interest in Kai's welfare. According to Maya and Sophie, Catherine hadn't visited her eldest son in years. Unless Catherine knew exactly what Elara was doing. Knew she was helping Kai, researching binding curses, getting close to uncovering the truth. Which meant Catherine was involved somehow. Maybe even responsible. The realization made Elara's blood run cold. She needed to confront the Luna. But carefully. Catherine was an alpha's mate, powerful in her own right, protected by pack law and warrior loyalty. If Elara accused her without proof, without strategy, she'd be ejected from pack territory, or worse. And Jamie would still be in danger. By the time evening fell, Elara had a plan. Risky, possibly stupid, but it was all she had. She would go to Catherine directly. Not with accusations, but with questions. She'd gauge the Luna's reactions, probe for weaknesses, and hopefully find some leverage, some way to protect Jamie while still helping Kai. The Luna's private quarters were in the east wing of the Alpha's mansion, accessible through a side entrance that Catherine used for her daily walks. Elara had observed the pattern over the past week. Every evening at 7, Catherine took a solitary walk through the rose garden, then returned to her rooms via the side door. At 6:50, Elara positioned herself near the garden entrance and waited. Catherine emerged precisely at 7, dressed in a flowing dress that might have been elegant on someone else. On the Luna, it looked like armor, perfectly tailored, utterly composed, hiding whatever turmoil might exist beneath. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style, her makeup flawless. She looked nothing like a woman whose son had been imprisoned for a decade. She looked like a woman who'd learned to live with her choices. Luna Catherine, Elara called softly. Catherine's head turned sharply. For just a moment, naked fear flashed across her features before the mask of composure slammed back into place. Miss Hayes. What are you doing here? I need to speak with you. Privately. I'm afraid I don't have time. It's about Kai. Elara held up the note. And about this threat you sent me. All the color drained from Catherine's face. She glanced around the empty garden, then grabbed Elara's arm with surprising strength. Inside. Now. She dragged Elara through the side door, up a narrow staircase, and into a sitting room decorated in shades of cream and gold. Beautiful and sterile, like everything else about Catherine's public persona. The moment the door closed, Catherine rounded on her. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. Elara kept her voice steady despite her hammering heart. Explain why you threatened my brother. Explain why you've let your son rot in a tower for 10 years. Explain how you can live with yourself. Catherine flinched as if she'd been struck. You think I wanted this? You think I chose this? I think you wrote this note. Elara held it up. I think you know exactly what happened to Kai. And I think you're terrified I'm going to expose the truth. For a long moment, Catherine just stared at her. Then something inside the Luna seemed to crack. Her shoulders sagged. Her carefully maintained composure crumbled. She sank onto a velvet settee and buried her face in her hands. You're right, she whispered. Gods help me, you're right about all of it. Elara's pulse thundered in her ears. Tell me. Catherine looked up, and her eyes were haunted. It was supposed to be simple. A delay, nothing more. Just enough time for Kai to mature, to grow into his power. The pack elders were already whispering that his muteness made him weak, that he couldn't lead. I thought if we could just postpone his shift by a year or two. You bound his wolf. Elara's voice was flat. You hired someone to curse your own son. I didn't know. Catherine's voice broke. I swear to the moon goddess, I didn't know what she was really doing. A rogue witch came to me when Kai was 15. She said she could ensure the strongest son would inherit. I thought she meant she'd help Kai shift early, show the pack his power. I never imagined that she'd trap his wolf forever. Elara's hands clenched into fists. That she'd condemn him to a living death? It was supposed to wear off after a year. She told me the binding would fade, that it was just temporary suppression. But after his ceremony, after he collapsed and couldn't shift, she disappeared. I tried to find her, tried to hire other witches to reverse it, but no one could break the curse. And by then, Catherine's voice dropped to a whisper. By then, Darius had already locked Kai away. Declared him wolfless. The pack had accepted Marcus as heir. If I'd confessed what I'd done, Darius would have killed me for betraying our son. The pack would have torn itself apart. So you let Kai suffer. Elara could barely speak past the rage choking her. You let him believe he was cursed by the moon goddess, defective, worthless. You let him spend 10 years in that tower thinking no one loved him. I visit him. Catherine's voice was desperate. In my mind, every night. I send him my thoughts, my apologies. He can't hear me, he's never been able to, but I try. I try to tell him I'm sorry. That's not enough. Elara's shout echoed in the elegant room. Sorry doesn't undo 10 years of imprisonment. Sorry doesn't free Fenrir. I know. Tears streamed down Catherine's face, destroying her perfect makeup. I know, and I've lived with that guilt every single day. But Miss Hayes, you have to understand, if you break the binding curse, I die. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Elara went very still. What? The witch, she tied the spell to my life force. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's how binding curses work when a parent commissions them. The chains around Fenrir are anchored to my heart, my blood, my magic. Catherine's hands twisted in her lap. If the curse breaks, the backlash will kill me instantly. My heart will stop. There's no way around it. Understanding crashed over Elara like a wave. That's why you wrote the note. Why you threatened Jamie. You're not trying to protect a secret. You're trying to save your own life. I'm trying to protect my family. Catherine stood abruptly, pacing. If I die, the pack will investigate. They'll discover what I did. Marcus will lose his position as heir because his mother was a traitor who cursed her own son. Darius will be destroyed by the scandal. The pack will fracture. Everything will fall apart. And Kai? Elara's voice was cold. What about him? Kai is, Catherine's voice broke. Kai is already lost. He's been lost for 10 years. Keeping him alive in that tower, even bound, even cursed, at least he's alive. At least he's safe. He's not alive. He's existing. There's a difference. But he's breathing. Catherine grabbed Alara's shoulders, her desperation palpable. He has food, shelter, safety. If I die, if the curse breaks and Fenrir emerges, what then? The pack will be terrified of him. A wolf that's been caged for a decade, driven mad by imprisonment, he'll be dangerous, unstable. Darius will have him killed to protect the pack. At least this way, Kai lives. Elara wrenched herself free. You're rationalizing. Justifying. You chose your own survival over your son's freedom, and now you're trying to make it sound noble. I'm choosing all my sons. Catherine's voice rose. If I die, Marcus loses everything. His position, his future, his reputation. And Kai might gain his wolf, but he'll lose his brother's respect, his father's protection. He'll be alone in a world that fears him. Is that really better? At least he'd be free to make his own choices. Elara's voice was steel. Instead of being a prisoner to yours. Catherine sank back onto the settee, her face in her hands. Please. I'm begging you. Let it go. Take your research and leave Silvercrest. I'll pay you, whatever you need to relocate, to keep your brother safe. Just stop trying to break the curse. You're asking me to condemn Kai to that tower forever. I'm asking you to save my life. Catherine looked up, her eyes red and desperate. I'm asking you to spare Marcus the horror of learning his mother is a monster. I'm asking you to prevent a pack war. Is one man's freedom worth all that destruction? Elara opened her mouth to answer, to say that yes, Kai's freedom was worth everything, that Catherine deserved whatever fate awaited her, when footsteps sounded in the hallway. The door flew open. Marcus stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He looked between Elara and his mother, and Elara realized with sick certainty that he'd heard everything. The walls in this old mansion were thin, and they'd been shouting. Marcus, Catherine rose, reaching for him. Don't. His voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut like a blade. Don't touch me. Sweetheart, let me explain. Explain? Marcus's face twisted with rage and anguish. Explain how you cursed Kai. How you've let him rot in that tower for 10 years knowing it was your fault. How you threatened an innocent man's life to cover up your crime. I was trying to protect you. Catherine's voice broke. All of you. The pack. Protect me? Marcus's laugh was ugly. You destroyed my brother to protect your own ambition. You turned me into the air by crippling him. Everything I am, everything I've built, it's all based on a lie. On your betrayal. Marcus, please. I worshipped you. Tears streamed down Marcus's face. I thought you were perfect. Noble. Strong. But you're just a coward who sacrificed her own son to save herself. If the curse breaks, I die. Catherine screamed. Is that what you want? Your mother dead? Marcus stared at her for a long, terrible moment. I want my brother free. Whatever the cost. He turned and ran. Marcus. Catherine lunged after him, but Elara caught her arm. Let him go. You don't understand, he's going to do something rash, something. A bell began to ring. Then another. Within seconds, the entire pack alarm system was blaring, a cacophony of warning bells and howls that meant only one thing. Emergency. Catherine's face went white. She wrenched free from Elara and ran to the window. Smoke rose in the distance, thick and black against the darkening sky. And at its source, flames engulfed the stone tower where Kai had been imprisoned for 10 years. No, Catherine whispered. No, no, no. But Elara was already running, her heart in her throat, terror and fury propelling her down the stairs and out into the night. Behind her, she heard Catherine's anguished scream. What has he done? Gods above, what has Marcus done? If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. Heir ran faster than she'd ever run in her life, her lungs burning, her legs pumping as smoke filled the night sky. Around her, the pack mobilized with military precision, warriors streaming from houses, voices shouting orders, the organized chaos of a crisis response honed by centuries of survival instinct. But all Heir could think was, Kai. Kai is in that fire. She reached the tower as the first warriors converged on it. Flames roared from the upper windows, licking at the stone walls, turning the medieval structure into a funeral pyre. The heat was intense even from 20 feet away, forcing the crowd back. Kai! Heir screamed, pushing forward. Kai! Strong hands grabbed her, held her back. She struggled against them, desperate, until she heard the voice behind her. It's too hot. No one could survive that. Rachel, the beta's wife, her face illuminated by firelight, her eyes full of pity. I'm sorry, Heir. I'm so sorry. No. Heir shook her head wildly. No, he has to be, he can't. Alpha Darius arrived like a storm, his massive frame parting the crowd effortlessly. His face was carved from stone, emotionless, but his eyes blazed with something far more dangerous than the flames consuming his son's prison. Who saw this start? His voice carried over the roar of fire and panicked voices. Who was near the tower? Silence. The pack members looked at each other, confusion and fear rippling through them. Then a warrior stepped forward, one of the guards who patrolled the grounds. Alpha, I saw Miss Hayes near the tower earlier this evening. Around 7. Every eye turned to Heir. I was walking, she said quickly. Just walking the grounds. I do it every evening. The human teacher. Darius's gaze fixed on her, cold and merciless. The one who's been asking questions about my son. Who's been spending time in the restricted library section researching dark magic. Heir's heart dropped. I was researching to help. To help yourself to what, exactly? Darius stalked toward her, and even without shifting, his alpha presence was crushing. Did you think you could steal a cursed wolf? Sell him to rogues who deal in magical experiments? There are packs who would pay well for a living specimen with a bound wolf. What? No. Heir backed up, but there was nowhere to go. The crowd pressed in around her, hostile now, suspicious. I would never. You've been seen entering the tower at night, Darius continued, his voice rising. Multiple warriors reported suspicious activity. You've been accessing restricted magical texts. And now, conveniently, a fire breaks out and my son is missing. Missing? The word barely registered past Heir's panic. He's not in there. The foundation gap is torn open, one of the warriors called from near the tower base. Big enough for a man to escape through. And there are human footprints in the dirt leading away. Darius's eyes narrowed. Where is he? Where did you take my son? I didn't take him anywhere. I don't know where he is. Heir's voice was shrill with desperation. Why would I set fire to the tower if I wanted to kidnap him? That makes no sense. To cover your tracks. To create chaos while you escaped with him. Darius moved closer, and Heir felt the full weight of his alpha power pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. You're human. You don't understand pack law. But I promise you, if my son is harmed, if he's been sold to rogues or worse, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your very short life wishing you'd never heard the name Silvercrest. Father, wait. Marcus appeared through the crowd, his face smudged with soot, his clothes disheveled as if he'd been fighting the fire himself. His expression was grave, concerned, every inch the devoted son and brother. Marcus. Darius's voice softened fractionally. Did you see anything? I saw Miss Hayes near the tower around sunset. She was agitated. Talking to herself. Marcus looked at Heir with what seemed like genuine regret. I didn't think much of it at the time. I thought perhaps she was stressed about work. But now. He trailed off meaningfully. Elara stared at him in disbelief. You're lying. You were there, you heard your mother. My mother is resting in her quarters, Marcus said smoothly. She's quite distraught about the fire, as you can imagine. She hasn't spoken to anyone this evening. The trap closed around Elara with perfect precision. Catherine would back up Marcus's story. She had too much to lose by admitting the truth. And Marcus, the golden son, would be believed over a human outsider every time. Take her to the holding cells, Darius ordered. No one enters or leaves without my permission. If Kai doesn't turn up unharmed within 24 hours, we'll proceed with formal charges. 2 warriors grabbed Elara's arms. She struggled, but it was useless. They were werewolves, impossibly strong, and she was just human. This is wrong, she shouted as they dragged her away. Marcus set that fire. He's been lying to you all. Ask Catherine, ask your Luna what really happened to Kai. But no one was listening. The crowd had already turned back to the burning tower, to the crisis at hand. And Marcus stood beside his father, the picture of a concerned son, watching Elara being dragged away with cold satisfaction in his eyes. The pack's holding cells were underground, carved from rock, reinforced with silver-laced iron that made them inescapable for werewolves. For a human, they were simply depressing, damp, dark, smelling of stone and old fear. Elara paced her cell like a caged animal, her mind racing. Kai was out there somewhere, free but hunted, probably terrified and confused. Marcus had engineered this perfectly, set the fire, freed Kai to make it look like a kidnapping, and framed Elara for all of it. But why? What did Marcus gain from? The sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor. Elara's head snapped up, hoping irrationally for rescue. But the figure that appeared in the torchlight made her blood run cold. Marcus. He looked different now. The concerned son act had vanished, replaced by something sharp and cold and triumphant. He stood outside her cell, hands in his pockets, and smiled. Hello, Elara. Comfortable? You bastard. She gripped the bars. You set that fire. You freed Kai and made it look like I did it. Clever girl. Marcus's smile widened. Though not quite clever enough, apparently. Why? What's your game? My game? Marcus laughed softly. My game has been playing out for 10 years. You just stumbled into the final act. Elara's stomach twisted. What are you talking about? Marcus pulled up a chair, conveniently placed, as if he'd planned this conversation, and sat, his posture relaxed. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, there were 2 brothers. The eldest was gentle, kind, beloved by everyone despite his inability to speak. He had what the pack elders called true alpha eyes, that indefinable quality of leadership that can't be taught or faked. His voice turned bitter. The younger brother was strong, charismatic, everything an alpha should be on paper. But he didn't have those eyes. And no matter what he did, how hard he trained, how perfectly he performed, the elders kept whispering, too bad about Kai's muteness. Otherwise, he'd make a magnificent alpha. So you cursed him, Elara whispered. Not your mother. You. Oh, mother helped. Unwittingly at first. Marcus's expression was almost fond. I found the witch when I was 14. Paid her with money I stole from father's office. She told me about binding curses, how they could trap a wolf, make it seem like it never existed. I just needed someone close to Kai to commission it. Someone whose life force could anchor the spell. You manipulated Catherine into cursing her own son. I simply presented her with an opportunity. Marcus shrugged. Mother was terrified the pack would reject Kai because of his muteness. When the witch approached her, at my arrangement, of course, offering to ensure the strongest son became heir, mother leapt at it. She thought she was protecting Kai. In reality, she was destroying him. Elara felt sick. The night of his ceremony. I was there when the witch cast the binding. Hidden in the crowd, watching Kai collapse, watching Fenrir scream inside his cage. It was. Marcus's eyes went distant. Beautiful, in a way. All that power, all that potential, locked away forever. And everyone blamed the moon goddess or bad genetics or fate. No one suspected the devoted little brother. You've been strengthening the curse. Understanding crashed over Heir. All these years. That's why Fenrir's chains burn tighter when Kai tries to shift. You've been making it worse. The original binding would have faded eventually, maybe in 20 years, maybe 30. I couldn't risk that. Marcus leaned forward. Every year on the anniversary of Kai's failed shift, I meet with the witch. She reinforces the spell, adds another layer of chains. By now, Fenrir is so deeply bound that even if Mother died and the original curse broke, my additions would keep the wolf trapped. You're insane. I'm practical. Marcus's voice hardened. You have no idea what it's like, growing up in someone's shadow. Knowing you're second best, knowing that if things were just slightly different, you'd have nothing. Kai didn't even want to be alpha. He would have been happy running the pack's school, working with children, letting someone else lead. But it didn't matter what he wanted. He had those goddamned eyes, and the pack would have followed him anywhere. So you took everything from him. Heir's voice shook with rage. His wolf. His freedom. His family. 10 years of his life. And now I'll take the rest. Marcus stood, his expression turning cold and businesslike. Here's what's going to happen. Kai is out there somewhere, confused and desperate. When the warriors find him, and they will, I'll be the one to bring him in. I'll comfort him, promise to protect him from Father's wrath, earn his trust back like I did before. And then there will be an unfortunate accident. Maybe Kai will try to escape again and fall from a cliff. Maybe he'll attack a warrior in his panic and be killed in self-defense. The details don't matter. Marcus's smile was a blade. What matters is that the cursed, wolfless heir will finally die, and the pack will mourn the tragedy while celebrating that they have a strong, whole alpha to lead them forward. They'll know you did it, Heir said desperately. Catherine knows the truth. She'll tell them. Mother will keep her mouth shut to save her own life. And even if she doesn't. Marcus shrugged. Who would believe her? She's the one who commissioned the original curse. She has more to lose than anyone. No, Mother will play the grieving matriarch, and I'll play the devastated brother, and the pack will never know the truth. What about me? You? Marcus looked at her almost pityingly. You're the villain in this story. The obsessed human who tried to kidnap a cursed wolf for profit. When Kai dies, it will be because you put him in danger, forced him out of his safe prison into a world that wanted him dead. You'll spend the rest of your life in this cell, if Father doesn't execute you first for causing his son's death. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and about your brother, Jamie, is it? Don't worry. That threat was just to keep you in line. I have no interest in harming some deaf human in the city. Though if you try to tell anyone this conversation happened, if you accuse me of anything. He let the threat hang. Well, accidents happen all the time to vulnerable people. Marcus walked away, his footsteps echoing in the stone corridor. A moment later, Heir heard a door slam, a lock engage, and then silence. She sank to the floor of her cell, her back against the cold stone wall. Kai was out there somewhere, hunted by his own pack, with a brother who wanted him dead. And she was trapped here, helpless, unable to warn him or protect him or. Heir. She gasped. The voice, not a voice, but a presence, filled her mind. Deep, primal, unmistakably wolf. Fenrir? A howl answered her, so close it seemed to vibrate in her bones. Not the anguished screaming she'd heard before, but something focused. Determined. Searching. Where are you? Heir thought desperately. Where's Kai? The howl shifted, changed, and suddenly she felt it, a pull, like an invisible thread connecting her heart to something outside the dungeon. A direction. A location. A bond. Footsteps in the corridor again, but lighter this time. Careful. Elara scrambled to her feet as a figure emerged from the shadows. Kai. He was filthy, covered in soot and dirt, his clothes torn. His hair was wild around his face, his eyes wide with fear and determination. But he was alive. He was here. His hands moved frantically. Are you hurt? I'm fine. How did you find me? Kai's expression was wondering, awed. I heard you screaming for me. In my head. Not with words, with feelings. Fear. Anger. Desperation. It was like a beacon. His hands hesitated, then continued, our bond. It's stronger now. I can feel where you are, what you're feeling. Like we're. He didn't finish the sign, but Elara knew what he meant. Her heart knew. Mates. The word hung between them, impossible and undeniable. The bond that had been forming since the night she first touched him, first heard Fenrir's howl, it had snapped fully into place. Human and werewolf, whole and broken, free and imprisoned. Mates. Can you get me out? Elara signed. Kai moved to the lock, examined it. His hands moved in frustration, its silver reinforced. I can't touch it without burning myself. And even if I could, I don't have the key. Then go. Get away from here before they find you. I'm not leaving you. Kai, Marcus set you up. He's planning to kill you and blame me for everything. You have to run. Kai's jaw set stubbornly. Not without you. Before Elara could argue, voices echoed from above. Warriors, calling Kai's name, their footsteps thundering through the corridors. Kai's eyes met hers through the bars, and she saw the war playing out across his face, the desperate need to save her versus the survival instinct screaming at him to flee. Go, Elara signed fiercely. I'll be okay. But you have to survive. Promise me you'll survive. Kai's hands trembled as they moved. I'll come back for you. I swear it. I'll find a way to free you, to expose Marcus, too. The voices were getting closer. Go. Kai pressed his hand against the bars one last time. Elara matched it with her own, palm to palm with iron between them. Through that touch, she felt everything, his fear, his determination, his love. Yes, love. Fragile and new and utterly certain. Then he was gone, melting back into the shadows seconds before three warriors burst into the corridor. They didn't even glance at Elara's cell. They were too focused on the hunt, on finding the escaped prisoner. But as their footsteps faded, Elara pressed her hand to her chest and felt it, that invisible thread connecting her to Kai, stretching but not breaking. Through it, she felt his determination, his fury at Marcus, his absolute refusal to let her rot in this cell. I'm coming, his thought whispered through the bond. Hold on. I'm coming back for you. And deep in her mind, Fenrir held agreement, a sound no longer of despair, but of rage and promise and war. Chapter 6. Kai returned in the darkest hour before dawn, when even the night shift warriors were sluggish with approaching exhaustion. Elara felt him coming before she saw him, a flutter of determination through the mate bond, followed by careful footsteps in the corridor. She was already at the bars when he materialized from the shadows, and this time he wasn't alone. Maya, the young Omega teaching assistant, stood beside him with a ring of keys clutched in her trembling hands. I can't believe I'm doing this, Maya whispered, fumbling with the lock. If they catch us. They won't, Kai signed one-handed, keeping watch on the corridor. You were never here. You fell asleep at your post. The keys were stolen. No one will believe that. They will if you sell it. Kai's expression was gentle despite the urgency thrumming through the bond. Thank you, Maya. For believing me. The lock clicked open. Elara stumbled out, her legs stiff from hours of sitting, and immediately Kai's arm was around her waist, steadying her. The contact sent a jolt through the mate bond, concern, relief, something deeper that made her breath catch. Go, Maya urged, pressing a small pack into Kai's free hand. I put food and water in here. There's a cave system 3 miles north. Smugglers used it decades ago. The pack doesn't patrol that far out regularly. You'll be punished for this, Kai signed. Maya's smile was sad. Some things are worth the punishment. Now go, before the shift change. They went. Running through the forest at night with a pack of werewolves hunting you was either the stupidest or bravest thing Alara had ever done. She couldn't decide which. Kai moved like a ghost through the trees, his hand gripping hers, pulling her along paths only he could see. Behind them, howls began to rise, the pack mobilizing, warriors shifting to track them by scent. Can you run faster? Kai signed during a brief pause behind a massive oak. Not much, Alara admitted, her lungs burning. I'm human, remember? Something flickered across Kai's face, frustration, fear, and then determination. He knelt before her. Get on my back. Kai. I'm stronger than I look. And we don't have time to argue. Alara climbed onto his back, wrapping her arms around his shoulders, her legs around his waist. The position was intimate, pressing her body against his, and she felt his sharp intake of breath through the bond. Then he was running. Fast. Faster than any human could move. Not werewolf fast, Kai still couldn't shift, but enhanced by whatever supernatural strength remained in his blood. Trees blurred past. The ground flew beneath his feet. And Alara clung to him, feeling the desperate strain in his muscles, the way his body pushed beyond its limits for her. The bond, she thought at him, testing their mental connection. Can you hear me? His answer came not in words but in feeling, yes, affirmation, wonder. How far to the caves? An image flickered into her mind, a rocky outcropping, a hidden entrance behind dead vines, darkness promising safety. Maybe 2 miles ahead. The howls behind them grew closer. Kai's steps faltered, his breathing ragged. He was exhausting himself, burning through energy reserves depleted by 10 years of inadequate food and no exercise. They weren't going to make it. Unless. Put me down, Alara thought at him. I have an idea. Kai slowed, let her slide off his back. His eyes questioned her, amber and worried and so tired. Alara grabbed his hand and pressed it to her chest, over her heart. The chains. I can feel them through our bond. What if I could loosen them? Just a little. Just enough to give you access to some of Fenrir's strength? Kai's eyes widened. That's never worked before. You've never had a mate before. Alara closed her eyes, focusing on the thread connecting them. It pulsed with life, with possibility. She followed it inward, down into the place where Kai's human soul met Fenrir's caged wolf. And there they were, the silver chains, glowing and terrible, wrapped so tightly around the massive black wolf that they cut into his fur. Fenrir's golden eyes snapped to her, and she felt his recognition, his desperate hope. I'm going to try something, she told him. It might hurt. I'm sorry. She reached for the chains, not physically, but with her will, her intention, the power of the mate bond that connected her to both Kai and his wolf. The chains burned her, searing her consciousness, but she gritted her teeth and pulled. One chain loosened. Just a fraction. Just enough. Fenrir roared triumphantly and lunged forward, not breaking free, but extending one massive paw through the gap Alara had created. Power flooded through the bond, into Kai, and Kai gasped aloud, a sound Alara had never heard him make. His body convulsed. His left hand twisted, bones cracking and reforming, fingers elongating into claws tipped with black talons. His eyes blazed pure gold. When he opened his mouth, fangs glinted in the moonlight. Partial shift, Alara breathed. Kai, you're partially shifted. Kai stared at his clawed hand in wonder and terror. Then the howl sounded again, close, too close, and wonder gave way to survival instinct. "Run," he signed with his human hand. "I'll hold them off." "No. We do this together." 6 warriors burst through the underbrush, already shifted, massive wolves with murderous intent in their eyes. They saw Kai's partial shift and hesitated for just a moment, confused by the impossibility of a wolfless heir showing fangs and claws. That moment was all Kai needed. He moved like violence incarnate, not graceful, not trained, but desperate and vicious and utterly silent. His clawed hand raked across the first wolf's muzzle, drawing blood and a yelp of pain. He ducked under a second wolf's lunge, grabbed it by the scruff with supernatural strength, and hurled it into a tree with a sickening crack. Through the bond, Heir felt everything, his fear, his fury, his primal need to protect his mate. And underneath it all, Fenrir's savage joy at finally being able to fight back. "Behind you!" Heir screamed mentally. Kai spun. A wolf's jaws snapped shut inches from his throat. He caught them with both hands, one clawed, one human, and forced them apart with a strength that shouldn't have been possible for someone who couldn't fully shift. But 2 more wolves were circling, and Kai was already breathing hard. The partial shift was costing him, burning through energy he didn't have. Blood ran from his nose, a sign of magical strain. Heir did the only thing she could think of. She became his eyes. Left side, low attack, she guided him through the bond. Duck. Now slash upward. Roll right, there's a wolf coming from above. They moved as one entity, Heir's human observation and tactical thinking combined with Kai's supernatural strength and Fenrir's killing instinct. It was brutal. Desperate. More survival than skill. But it worked. 3 wolves retreated, whining, bloodied but not fatally injured. The other 3 circled warily, reassessing this opponent who should have been helpless but was somehow fighting like a cornered predator. The caves, Kai thought at her. Now. While they're regrouping. They ran again, Heir on Kai's back, his clawed hand digging into her thigh for purchase while his human hand gripped her arm. Behind them, the wolves howled in frustration but didn't immediately follow. They'd need to regroup, call for reinforcements. It bought Kai and Heir precious minutes. The cave entrance was exactly where Kai had pictured it, hidden behind dead vines and centuries of accumulated debris. They squeezed through the narrow opening into darkness that smelled of stone and old water. Kai's partial shift faded as soon as they were inside. His clawed hand reverted to human, his eyes dimming from gold to amber. He collapsed against the cave wall, trembling, blood still trickling from his nose. Heir knelt beside him, cupping his face. "You were amazing." His hands shook as they moved, I shifted. Partially, but still. For the first time in 10 years, I felt Fenrir's power. Because of our bond. Because of you. Kai's eyes met hers, and the emotion in them was overwhelming. With you, I'm not broken. I'm not defective or cursed or worthless. With you. His hands paused, then continued, I'm enough. Heir's throat tightened. You were always enough. The world just didn't deserve you. She leaned forward, intending to press her forehead to his, a gesture of comfort, of solidarity. But Kai tilted his head at the last moment, and suddenly her lips were on his. The kiss was tentative at first, uncertain. Kai had been isolated for so long, had so little practice with intimacy. But then the mate bond flared between them like wildfire, and tentative became desperate. Kai's human hand cupped the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair. Heir's hands found his chest, feeling his heart hammering beneath her palms. The kiss deepened, and through their connection, she felt everything he was feeling, 10 years of loneliness shattering, hope blooming like spring after endless winter, love, raw and new and absolutely certain. And underneath it all, Fenrir's presence wrapped around them both. Not threatening. Not distant. But protective, grateful, accepting. The wolf recognized his mate, and he approved. The mate bond snapped fully into place with an almost audible click, and Alara gasped against Kai's mouth. She could feel him now, not just emotions, but presence. He was part of her, woven into her soul, as essential as breathing. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Kai's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you," he signed. "I know it's too fast, too desperate, but I love you too," Alara whispered aloud, knowing he'd understand even if he couldn't hear the words. She signed them anyway, "I love you." They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other's air, the mate bond singing between them. Then reality intruded. "We need to end this," Kai signed eventually. "Marcus will keep hunting us. And my mother, she's the key to everything. If we can convince her to confess, to tell the pack what really happened. She won't. She's too afraid of dying. Then we make her choose, her life, or her soul." Kai's expression hardened. "Either way, this ends tonight." They waited until dusk, when the pack would be transitioning between day and night shifts. Then they made their way back through the forest, using paths Kai remembered from childhood, staying downwind of patrols. Luna Catherine's private quarters were dark when they arrived. No guards outside, Catherine wasn't considered a target, and security had been redirected to finding the fugitives. Kai picked the lock with skills Alara hadn't known he possessed. The door swung open silently. The smell hit them first, copper and meat and something else. Something final. Alara's hand flew to her mouth. Kai went rigid beside her. Luna Catherine lay in the center of her elegant sitting room, her throat torn out, her eyes open and staring at nothing. Blood pooled beneath her, soaking into the cream carpet, turning it burgundy. Her hands were frozen in a defensive position, as if she'd tried to ward off her attacker. And standing over her body, covered in blood that was clearly not his own, Marcus smiled. "Well," he said pleasantly, as if they'd met for tea instead of stumbling onto a murder scene. "That saves me the trouble of hunting you down. Though I'm disappointed, brother. I expected you to run farther than this." Kai's hands moved in sharp, furious gestures. "You killed her. Your own mother. Our mother was going to confess." Marcus stepped over Catherine's body with casual disregard. "I overheard her praying in here, asking the moon goddess for courage to tell father the truth. I couldn't allow that. Surely you understand, I've worked too hard to let a guilty conscience ruin everything now. You're insane. I'm practical." Marcus's smile widened. "And now, conveniently, I have the perfect ending to my story. The cursed, wolfless son, driven mad by his imprisonment, escaped with the help of his human lover. Together, they murdered Luna Catherine when she tried to stop them from fleeing. Tragic, really. But it gives father closure, gives the pack a clear villain, and gives me everything," Alara finished, her voice shaking with rage. "You get everything you ever wanted." "Exactly." Marcus's eyes glittered. "Now, you have two choices. Come with me quietly, let the warriors find you covered in mother's blood, make this easy. Or fight, and I'll kill you both right here and claim self-defense. Either way, you lose." Through the mate bond, Alara felt Kai's fury, his desperation. And underneath, Fenrir's howl, not of despair this time, but of murderous intent. "We fight," Kai signed, his eyes blazing gold. Marcus's smile turned predatory. "I was hoping you'd say that." He shifted. And the final battle began. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. Marcus's shifted form was magnificent, a steel-gray wolf, perfectly proportioned, rippling with power. Everything an alpha's heir should be. He circled them in Catherine's blood-soaked sitting room, lips pulled back in a snarl that was almost a smile. Kai stepped in front of Alara, his body still frustratingly human. Through the bond, she felt his desperation to shift, to meet his brother on equal ground. But even with their connection, even with the partial shift he'd managed earlier, a full transformation was beyond reach. The chains still held. Marcus lunged. Kai dodged, barely, his supernatural reflexes saving him from jaws that would have torn out his throat. He grabbed a chair and smashed it across Marcus's flank, a human's weapon, crude but effective. The wolf yelped and retreated, reassessing. "We can't win this," Heir breathed. "Not here. Not like this." Through the bond, agreement, frustration, fury. Marcus lunged again, but this time Kai was ready. His hand found a silver letter opener on Catherine's desk, one of the ornamental pieces she'd collected, pure silver, deadly to werewolves. He slashed at Marcus's snout, and the wolf jerked back with a howl of pain. The sound brought warriors running. "Move!" Heir grabbed Kai's arm, and they ran, through the quarters, down a servant's staircase, out into the night. Behind them, Marcus's howl turned from pain to rage to summoning. Within seconds, the entire pack would know where they were. "It's over," Heir panted as they stumbled into the forest. "We can't keep running. We have to." Alpha Darius appeared ahead of them, flanked by a dozen warriors. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes were molten with grief and fury. Enough. His alpha command rolled over them like a physical force, and even Kai, wolfless, cursed Kai, stumbled under its weight. "You will submit. Now." They had no choice. Warriors surrounded them, forced them to their knees. Silver chains materialized, the pack had come prepared, and were locked around their wrists, burning Heir's human skin, making Kai's breath hiss through his teeth. Marcus limped out of the darkness, shifted back to human, still naked and covered in their mother's blood. He should have looked vulnerable. Instead, he looked triumphant. "Father," he said, his voice breaking perfectly. "Thank the goddess you came. They killed her. They killed Mother." The trial was held at dawn, in the pack ceremonial circle, an ancient stone amphitheater where justice had been dispensed for centuries. The entire pack crowded in, wolves and humans both, drawn by the scandal and horror of Aluna's murder. Heir and Kai knelt in the center, still chained, flanked by grim-faced warriors. Alpha Darius sat in judgment on the raised Alpha's seat, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Beside him, Marcus played his part perfectly, the grieving son, the dutiful heir, supporting his father in this darkest hour. "Luna Catherine Silvercrest was found dead in her quarters last night," Darius announced, his voice carrying across the assembled pack. "Her throat torn out. These two," he gestured at Kai and Heir, "were discovered at the scene, covered in her blood." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Shock. Horror. Some anger, but also, Heir noted with a flicker of hope, confusion. Doubt. "I didn't kill her," Heir said, her voice steady despite her terror. "Neither did Kai. Marcus murdered his own mother because she was going to confess the truth about what he did to Kai 10 years ago." The murmurs grew louder. Darius's eyes narrowed. "Explain." And so Heir did. She told them everything, about the binding curse, about Catherine's confession, about Marcus hiring the witch and manipulating his mother into cursing Kai. About the chains around Fenrir, about Marcus's jealousy, about 10 years of deliberate torture disguised as mercy. The pack listened in stunned silence. When she finished, all eyes turned to Marcus. He looked appropriately shocked. Devastated. "Father, these accusations are insane. I loved Kai. I love him still, despite everything. Why would I curse my own brother?" "Because you wanted to be Alpha," Heir said flatly. "Because Kai had something you couldn't fake, true Alpha eyes. The pack would have followed him, mutinous and all. You couldn't let that happen. This is fantasy." Marcus's voice was gentle, pitying. "Father, the human has clearly been manipulated by dark magic. Or perhaps she's the manipulator. We know she's been researching binding curses, visiting Kai in secret. What if she's the one who cursed him years ago, perhaps paid by a rival pack, and now she's trying to shift blame?" Brilliant, Heir thought bitterly. Turn her own research against her. "I wasn't even here 10 years ago," she protested. But you could be working for whoever was, Marcus countered smoothly. Father, I beg you, don't let Mother's death be compounded by false accusations against her innocent son. The pack murmured, uncertain now. Some looked at Kai with pity, others with suspicion. Without evidence, without proof, this would come down to Marcus's word against Ilara's. And Marcus was beloved. Ilara felt Kai's despair through the bond, his frustration at being unable to speak in his own defense. His silence, always his silence, condemning him. Then inspiration struck. Insane, dangerous inspiration. There's a way to prove I'm telling the truth, Ilara said. Memory extraction. The pack which can examine my memories directly. You'll see everything, Marcus's confession in the dungeon, Catherine's admission, all of it. Darius's eyes sharpened. Memory extraction is dangerous. It can damage the mind permanently. I'll take that risk. Father, this is unnecessary, Marcus began, but Darius cut him off with a gesture. If she's willing, we proceed. He looked to the crowd. Bring Elder Morgana. The pack, which was ancient, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, her eyes milky with cataracts but somehow still sharp. She shuffled into the circle, leaning on a gnarled staff, and studied Ilara with unsettling intensity. You understand the risks, child? I'll be rifling through your mind like pages in a book. If you resist, if there's any deception, your consciousness could shatter. I understand. Morgana nodded slowly. Then we begin. The witch produced a bowl of hammered silver, filled it with water from a sacred spring, and added herbs that smoked and hissed. She began to chant in a language older than the pack itself, her voice surprisingly strong. Place your hands in the water, she instructed. Ilara obeyed. The water was ice cold, burning where it touched the silver burns on her wrists. Morgana placed her gnarled hands over Ilara's, and the world tilted. Pain lanced through Ilara's skull. It felt like someone was peeling back the layers of her brain, exposing every thought, every memory, every secret. She screamed, couldn't help it, and through the bond, felt Kai's anguish at her suffering. But it was working. Images began to appear in the silver bowl, visible to everyone in the circle. The pack watched, transfixed, as Ilara's memories played out like a film. Her first night in the tower, meeting Kai. Their conversations in sign language. The research into binding curses. Catherine's confession, when Kai was 15, a rogue which offered to ensure the strongest son becomes heir, playing out in perfect detail. The pack gasped. Some wolves growled. All eyes turned to Marcus. But then came the dungeon scene. Marcus's face appearing in Ilara's memory, his voice cold. I found the witch when I was 14. Paid her with money I stole from father's office. The pack erupted. Shouts of anger, disbelief, betrayal. No. Marcus roared. This is a trick. She's lying. But the memories kept playing. Marcus describing how he'd manipulated Catherine. How he'd strengthened the curse every year. How he planned to kill Kai and frame Ilara. It was perfect. Irrefutable. And then Morgana's grip on Ilara's hands tightened painfully. The images in the bowl flickered. Distorted. Marcus's face in the memory began to blur, shift, reform into Ilara's own face. What? Ilara gasped, but Morgana's chanting had changed, taken on a darker tone. In the bowl, the memories were rewriting themselves. Now it showed Ilara speaking Marcus's words, Ilara confessing to cursing Kai, Ilara planning to murder Catherine. The images looked real, felt real, but they were lies, fabrications. Manipulation, Morgana announced, releasing Ilara's hands. Ilara collapsed, her head spinning, blood dripping from her nose. The human used magic to create false memories. She fabricated this entire narrative to frame Marcus Silvercrest. No, Ilara whispered. That's not, she's lying, Marcus paid her. But the pack wasn't listening. They were staring at the falsified memories in the bowl, seeing Ilara's face confessing to crimes Marcus had committed. Morgana was Marcus's accomplice. The witch who'd bound Kai. And she'd just made Alara look like a deranged criminal. Enough. Darius's voice cracked like thunder. I have seen enough. He stood, and the full weight of his alpha authority made the air itself feel heavy. Alara Hayes, you are found guilty of manipulating my son, of murder, of dark magic, and of conspiracy against this pack. Kai Silvercrest, his voice broke slightly. My son. You are found guilty of matricide and of conspiring with an outsider against your own blood. Father, no. The protest came from the crowd. Maya, the young Omega, her face streaked with tears. Kai would never. Silence. Darius's command cut her off. The sentence is death. By Silver Blade, at sunset. May the moon goddess have mercy on your souls, because I will not. Warriors dragged them away from the circle, back toward the dungeons. Alara's mind was spinning, fractured by Morgana's violation, unable to process what had just happened. Through the bond, she felt Kai's devastation, his guilt, his rage at his own powerlessness. They were thrown into a cell together this time, a small mercy, allowing them to die in each other's presence. Heavy silver chains were locked around their necks, their wrists, their ankles. The metal burned, blistered, made breathing difficult. Kai's hands moved slowly, painfully. I'm sorry. Alara shook her head, tears streaming down her face. Not your fault. My silence damned us. His hands trembled. If I could speak, I could have testified. Could have made them believe. But I'm mute, and the mute can't defend themselves, can't be heard, can't matter. You matter to me. And now we both die for it. Kai's eyes were desolate. I should have stayed in my tower. Should have let you walk away that first night. Instead, I dragged you into this nightmare. Stop. Alara grabbed his chained hands. I chose this. I chose you. And I'd do it again. They sat together in the dimming light, holding each other as best they could with chains between them, feeling the minutes tick away toward sunset. Toward execution. Outside, they could hear the pack preparing. The ceremonial platform being erected. The silver blade being blessed. The crowd gathering to witness justice. Through the bond, Alara felt Kai's acceptance of death, his resignation. And underneath it, Fenrir's howl, quieter now, exhausted by years of struggle. I'm sorry, she thought at the wolf. I tried. I'm so sorry I couldn't free you. Fenrir's presence brushed against her consciousness. Not angry. Just tired. Ready for it to end. No, Alara thought. Not like this. Not without trying one more time. The cell door opened. Warriors entered, began unlocking them from the wall chains, preparing to lead them to execution. Alara and Kai were hauled to their feet, marched out into the fading daylight. The pack circle was full. Hundreds of wolves, some in human form, some shifted, watching with expressions ranging from satisfaction to sorrow. Marcus stood beside his father, his face appropriately grave. Morgana waited by the execution platform, staff in hand, ready to perform the final rites. Kai and Alara were forced to kneel on the platform. The executioner, a massive warrior with cold eyes, drew the blessed silver blade. It gleamed in the sunset light, beautiful and terrible. Any final words? Darius asked, the traditional question. Alara opened her mouth. Then closed it. Words wouldn't save them. Words had already failed. But there was one thing she hadn't tried. One desperate, insane gamble. The executioner raised the blade. And Alara screamed, not with her voice, but with her mind. She grabbed every ounce of energy in her body, every fragment of her will, every desperate shred of her love for Kai, and she threw it through the mate bond like a battering ram. Fenrir. She roared into the darkness where the wolf was chained. Break free. Break free now. She grabbed the chains in her mind, the silver bonds that had held for 10 years, that had been strengthened and reinforced until they seemed unbreakable, and she pulled. Not with magic. Not with skill. Just with raw, desperate intention fueled by love and rage and the absolute refusal to let Kai die in silence. One chain cracked. Then another. Break. Elara screamed again, pouring everything she had into Kai, into Fenrir, into the space between them. The chains shattered. Kai's body convulsed. His eyes blazed pure gold. His mouth opened in a scream, and this time, sound emerged. Not words, but something deeper, more primal. A howl. His first howl in 10 years. It shook the earth. Wolves in the crowd whimpered, flattened their ears, some even submitted instinctively to the raw alpha power in that sound. It wasn't the howl of a victim. It was the howl of a king finally claiming his throne. Kai's body exploded into wolf form. The transformation was violent, instantaneous, unstoppable. Bones cracked and reformed. Muscles expanded. Black fur erupted across his skin. The silver chains around him shattered like glass. And when the shift completed, Fenrir stood before them, a massive black wolf easily half again as large as any wolf in the pack, with eyes like liquid gold and presence that made the air itself feel heavy with power. For 10 years, he'd been caged. Starved. Tortured. Now, finally, he was free. And he was furious. Fenrir's second howl was a declaration of war. Chapter 8. Fenrir stood on the execution platform, a creature of midnight and fury, and the assembled pack felt true fear for the first time in a generation. This wasn't the broken, cursed, wolfless air they'd pitted and forgotten. This was something primal. Ancient. A wolf so massive he made even Alpha Darius's shifted form look ordinary. His black fur absorbed the dying sunlight, making him appear carved from shadow itself. And his eyes, those burning gold eyes, held 10 years of rage, pain, and betrayal. The executioner stumbled backward, his blessed blade clattering to the platform. Warriors shifted instinctively, surrounding the platform, but their growls were uncertain. Afraid. Good, Elara thought through the bond. Let them be afraid. She felt Kai's consciousness merging with Fenrir's, not two separate entities anymore, but one unified being. The wolf and the man, finally whole after a decade of forced separation. And through their mate bond, she felt his power. It was staggering. Overwhelming. The kind of alpha presence that made other wolves instinctively bare their throats in submission. Fenrir's massive head swung toward Marcus, and a growl rumbled from his chest, so deep it vibrated through the stone beneath them. Then something impossible happened. Fenrir spoke. Not in human words, but in the ancient language of wolves, growls and snarls that carried meaning through the pack bond, comprehensible to every shifter present. Elara, human as she was, could only understand through her connection to Kai. But the pack heard him perfectly. And what they heard made them recoil in horror. 10 years, Fenrir's growls said, the words resonating through every wolf's consciousness. 10 years I screamed. 10 years I was chained, tortured, slowly dying while you all watched and did nothing. The pack whimpered. Some wolves dropped to their bellies in submission. My own mother cursed me. My brother, Fenrir's gaze fixed on Marcus, and his lips pulled back from fangs the size of daggers. My brother paid to have me destroyed. He manipulated her guilt, strengthened the curse every year, and ensured I could never challenge him. And when our mother finally grew a conscience? When she decided to confess? Fenrir stalked toward Marcus, each step deliberate, predatory. He killed her. Tore out her throat and framed me for it. Just as he framed me for being wolfless. Just as he framed my mate for murder. Everything, was his lie. That's not true. Marcus's voice cracked. He looked to his father desperately. Father, he's been driven mad by the curse. You can't believe. Silence. The alpha command in Fenrir's growl was so powerful that Marcus's mouth snapped shut involuntarily. Even Darius flinched, his eyes widening in recognition. True alpha. His son, his broken, cursed, discarded son, was a true alpha. Born with the kind of power that couldn't be trained or earned. The kind that made other alphas look like pretenders. The witch, Fenrir continued, his gaze swinging to Morgana. The ancient crone had gone pale, gripping her staff like a lifeline. She bound me at my brother's request. And today, she falsified memories to protect him. Because he's been paying her for 10 years to keep me caged. Lies. Morgana's voice shook. I would never. Your bank records say otherwise. Fenrir's growl held dark satisfaction. Did you think I spent 10 years in that tower doing nothing? I couldn't speak. Couldn't shift. But I could think. I could plan. And I could watch. I know where you've been depositing gold every year on the anniversary of my binding. I know the account is in Marcus's name. Elara blinked. Kai had never mentioned this, had never let on that he'd been investigating, gathering evidence during his imprisonment. But of course he had. What else was there to do in a cage except plot your eventual freedom? The pack was stirring now, growls of confusion and anger rising. Some wolves turned on Morgana, teeth bared. Others looked at Marcus with dawning horror and betrayal. Father. Marcus backed away from Fenrir, his composure finally cracking. You have to stop him. He's dangerous. Unstable. If you let him live, he'll challenge you, destroy everything we've built. Everything you built on my bones, Fenrir snarled. On my suffering. On our mother's murder. Marcus's face twisted with rage and desperation. You were weak. Mute and pathetic. The pack deserves a strong alpha, not some damaged. He never finished. Marcus shifted, his steel-gray wolf bursting forward, lunging at Fenrir with everything he had. It was a good shift, fast, powerful, the result of years of training and natural talent. It wasn't nearly enough. Fenrir moved like black lightning. He caught Marcus mid-leap, jaws closing around his brother's throat, not to kill, but to dominate. They crashed to the ground, and Fenrir's sheer size and weight pinned Marcus helplessly beneath him. The fight, if it could be called that, lasted seconds. Fenrir released Marcus's throat and stepped back, allowing the steel-gray wolf to scramble to his feet. Marcus's wolf was bleeding, whimpering, but alive. He circled, looking for an opening, but every instinct screamed at him that he was outmatched. You wanted to be alpha so badly, Fenrir growled. Let me show you what a real alpha can do. The air itself seemed to thicken. Fenrir's alpha presence expanded, crushing, absolute, and it focused entirely on Marcus with surgical precision. I, Kai Silvercrest, born of alpha blood and true alpha power, strip you of your wolf. The alpha command hit Marcus like a physical blow. His wolf form convulsed, writhing in agony. The pack watched in horror as Marcus's shift reversed, but wrong, unnatural, forced. His wolf was being ripped away from him, severed from his human soul by pure alpha will. It was the ultimate punishment. The cruelest mercy. Death would have been kinder. When it was done, Marcus lay naked and human on the stone, gasping, his eyes wild with shock and grief. Elara felt through the bond what had been done. Marcus's wolf was gone. Not bound like Fenrir had been. Not sleeping. Simply, erased. He would never shift again. Never feel his wolf's presence. Never be anything but human. The voiceless, powerless one. Fenrir had made Marcus into everything he'd tried to make Kai. No, Marcus whispered, his voice breaking. No, no, and no. But it was done. Irreversible. And the pack understood, this was justice. Brutal, perfect justice. Fenrir turned away from his broken brother and padded to where Alpha Darius stood frozen, his face ashen. For a long moment, father and son stared at each other. Then Darius shifted to human form, naked and vulnerable, and dropped to his knees. Kai. His voice was wrecked. My son. What have I done? You abandoned me, Fenrir said simply. You believed I was cursed without question. You locked me away for 10 years and never visited. Never asked if I was in pain. Never wondered if there was another explanation. You were so ashamed of having a defective son that you forgot I was your son at all. I know. Tears streamed down Darius's face, the first time most of the pack had ever seen their alpha cry. I know, and I will carry that shame until I die. I don't ask for forgiveness, Kai. I don't deserve it. But I'm begging you, please believe that I thought I was protecting you. That I thought keeping you alive, even imprisoned, was the merciful choice. Mercy would have been believing in me. Mercy would have been investigating why my shift failed. Mercy would have been loving me despite my silence. I know. Darius bowed his head, exposing his throat in the ultimate gesture of submission. I abdicate. The pack is yours, Kai. You're the true alpha. The rightful heir. I step aside. The pack stirred. Some wolves howled their approval. Others whimpered in confusion. But no one challenged. The alpha bloodline was clear, and Kai's power was undeniable. Fenrir studied his father for a long moment. Then, I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The wounds you gave me are too deep for easy healing. Darius nodded, accepting this. But I'll take the alpha position. Not for you. Not for legacy or tradition. But because if I don't, another defective wolf might be locked in a tower. Another mute child might be told they're worthless. Another family might discard someone they deem imperfect. Fenrir's eyes blazed. I'll be alpha to protect the ones you failed to protect. The broken. The different. The rejected. Then you'll be a better alpha than I ever was, Darius said quietly. Fenrir shifted then, fluidly, easily, the transformation as natural as breathing now that the chains were gone. Kai stood before them in human form, still thin from years of malnourishment, still bearing scars from his imprisonment. But he stood tall. Proud. Unbroken. And when he opened his mouth, a sound emerged that made the entire pack freeze. A voice. Raspy from a decade of disuse. Rough and unsteady. But real. Human. His. You, the word came out broken, barely recognizable. Kai's hand flew to his throat in wonder. Through the bond, Elara felt his shock, his joy, his terror at this impossible gift. He tried again. You gave me my voice. He was looking at Elara. Only at Elara. The pack, his father, Marcus's broken form, none of it mattered except her. My mate, Kai continued, each word a struggle but gaining strength. My Luna. Elara was crying. She stumbled off the platform and ran to him, throwing her arms around him, and he held her like she was the only real thing in a world of ghosts. How, she whispered against his chest. Fenrir's gift. Kai's voice was still rough, still uncertain, but it was his. When we merged, he gave me what I lacked. A voice through him. Even in human form. I can speak. It was rare, a gift usually only true alphas possessed. The ability to channel their wolf's power even when human. Kai had been granted it as compensation for 10 years of forced silence. The pack watched this reunion with varying expressions: awe, shame, hope. Maya was openly sobbing. Even some of the warriors who'd imprisoned them looked stricken with guilt. Kai pulled back from Elara and addressed the pack, his voice growing steadier with each word. Things will change. Under my leadership, no wolf will be cast aside for being different. We'll create sanctuary for those other packs reject, the disabled, the mute, the scarred, the imperfect. We'll prove that strength comes in many forms. He looked at Morgana, who trembled under his gaze. You'll break every curse you've ever cast, or you'll face the same fate as Marcus. Choose. I'll break them, Morgana whispered. All of them. I swear it. Good. Then maybe you'll live long enough to regret what you've done. Kai turned to his father. You may remain in the pack, but not as alpha. You'll work to undo the damage you caused. Starting with visiting every family who has a defective member and apologizing personally for the culture of shame you perpetuated. Darius nodded, accepting this penance. Finally, Kai looked at Marcus, naked, wolfless, destroyed. For a moment, something almost like pity flickered across his face. Then it hardened. You live. But you live as I lived, powerless, voiceless in the ways that matter, reminded every day of what you've lost. Maybe in 50 years, I'll consider forgiveness. But not today. Marcus said nothing. Just curled into himself, broken. 3 months later, Elara stood on the cliff overlooking Silvercrest territory and marveled at how much had changed. The tower had been torn down, its stones repurposed to build a new structure, a sanctuary and school for wolves with disabilities. Already, families from neighboring packs were sending their children, grateful for a place that saw difference as strength rather than shame. Kai stood beside her in wolf form, his massive black body warm against her side. They came here often, to this quiet place where they could simply be together. Elara's hands moved in sign language. You were never broken. Kai shifted to human, though he could have signed with his paws, he'd learned how. But some conversations deserved his human form, his human voice. His hands moved in response, because you saw me when I was invisible. It was their ritual now. Kai could speak, his voice had strengthened with use, was almost normal now. But with Elara, in private moments, he preferred sign language. It was theirs. Intimate. Special. The language that had saved him when he had nothing else. I love you, Kai said aloud, then signed it too for emphasis. I love you, Elara signed back. He pulled her into his arms, and she felt Fenrir's presence through the bond, content, protective, utterly devoted to his mate. The wolf who'd screamed in darkness for 10 years was finally at peace. Below them, the pack went about its evening routines. Children played, including several deaf pups who'd found safety here. Warriors trained. Families gathered for meals. It looked like any other pack. But it wasn't. Because here, the broken were welcomed. The different were celebrated. The rejected found home. Kai shifted back to Fenrir, and Elara climbed onto his back, settling into the familiar position. They'd run the forest together tonight, as they did most nights, a black wolf and his human mate, racing through trees under the moon. The pack below saw them silhouetted against the sunset, their true alpha and his Luna, the rejected heir who'd become the most powerful wolf in a generation, and the human woman who'd heard his silent scream and refused to let it go unanswered. Fenrir threw back his head and howled, not in anguish this time, but in triumph. In joy. In freedom finally claimed after years of chains. And the pack howled back, their voices joining his in a song of acceptance, redemption, and hope. Elara pressed her face against Fenrir's fur and smiled. They'd survived the darkness. Found each other in the depths of despair. Built something beautiful from the ashes of cruelty, and now, finally, they were free, together. Always that I know you enjoyed this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section below and forward this video to family and friends. Thanks for listening. The end.